Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Weather Sim forecast. And in today's forecast, we're going to be talking about several winter storms that are still going to continue to impact the United States over the next couple of weeks. And these are looking even worse than what they were looking like a few days ago, as not only are we still expecting some areas to get over a foot of snowfall by the time we head into this weekend, but we also got a second snowstorm that is looking like it's going to bring some pretty big totals between 4 to 6 inches as far down south as the Lower Ohio Valley and even into areas of the Mid-Atlantic, and that will be by the time we head into early next week, especially on Monday through Wednesday, which we will get to that in just a little bit. But make sure to subscribe to the channel, as we will continue to keep you guys up to date with these winter storms that will roll on through, which will be our main focus from now on. Make sure to also leave a like on today's video, and feel free to leave any questions, comments, or concerns that you guys have. I'll be glad to hear how good your guys' Thanksgiving was, so feel free to let me know, and let's now get started. So the first thing I want to look at is going to be the models, starting off with the alerts first of all. So you guys can see that we do still have winter storm watches, warnings, and advisories in effect. We got winter storm warnings and advisories currently in effect from areas of Montana down into the Dakotas, into southern Minnesota, much of Iowa, down there into Illinois, and even parts there Wisconsin are all under a winter storm warning or a winter weather advisory. So definitely pretty considerable either way, because that will likely cause some pretty dangerous travel by the time we head into tomorrow. And we even got a winter storm watch that also remains in effect for areas of southwest Michigan, northern Indiana, parts of Illinois, and even parts there of northwest Ohio, all under a winter storm watch. So we will need to keep an eye on that very closely, and I bet it's still in effect because there is still some uncertainty about if that will be all snow or if that's going to change over to rain, which once again we'll talk about that stuff in just a little bit. And then we also got some freeze watches even in effect down there towards the Gulf Coast, as we got some pretty big cold shots of air still coming our way. So let's take a look at that by first starting off with the HRRR model, because we will need to keep an eye on this next system once again, as it's still looking like we could be seeing some widespread snowfall across much of the northern plains, Midwest, and even into parts there of the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley. Now, the reason why that winter storm watch still remains in effect for this area right here, which includes northern Ohio Valley, is because we still don't know how soon it's going to change over to rain, because this shows it being almost all snow for a while, but look at this, then it starts to change over to some rainfall, and I'll zoom in so that way you guys can see a little bit better. But we start to see more of that change over to rainfall, especially where you see that green and even that purple showing either rain or rain and snow mix, but either way it will mainly just be rain. And so that will be something to keep an eye on closely, and like I said, that is the main reason why that winter storm watch still remains in effect, is because we're still needing to see if it's going to still be snowfall by this time, or if we're going to once again see that change over to rainfall for areas of the northern Ohio Valley. But other than that, though, we do have pretty good confidence about being all snow across Iowa. You guys can see that it never changes over to snowfall across Iowa, nor does it change over to snowfall for or rainfall, I should say, for northern Illinois, and it even stays snowfall across almost all of Michigan too. So like I said, that's the main reason why we still need to keep an eye on areas of the Ohio Valley, because either this will turn out to be a big winter storm with major accumulation, or we see some accumulation but then it melts completely, either due to the surface being above freezing or because of rain once again. So we will still need to keep an eye on that closely, as there is a little bit of a disagreement in the models too, once again, and that's mainly if we compare that to the European model, because the European model does not really show this being that strong at all. Look at that. This shows it much more weaker compared to the HRRR model, and keep in mind that we should probably be using the short range model, but we're looking at the short run of the European model, which, if you're wondering what that is, there's one run on the European model that goes 360 hours out, and there's another run that I'm using that goes 144 hours out. And so using the shorter run on the European model is still, a pretty good thing to use when looking at things like this. And the European model actually changes it over to rain a lot sooner than the HRRR model. Still shows a lot of snowfall, but once again, it changes over to rainfall a lot sooner compared to the HRRR model. And in my opinion, we should probably agree with the HRRR model because it's kind of like a future radar, to be honest, but we still, once again, will need to watch it, because just because that model shows it doesn't mean it's going to be 100% right. There can still be some little small things that change, and if those things change, it can obviously make a huge difference. But after that system heads out, the other system that we'll be watching for is going to come early next week. So we will once again be watching the snowstorm this weekend, but we will also need to watch the one at the start of next week. Because just look at this. We see a low down here across areas of Texas, and we see a pretty big clipper system up there towards areas of the Central Plains. So we got this area of snow, and we got this low pressure system down here across areas of Texas and New Mexico. Look what happens as we take this forward. Both of those are going to collide with each other. Look at that. We see both of them combining with each other, which then allows for snowfall to develop across areas of the Ohio Valley. And just look at this, guys. Pretty big snowstorm, especially if you live north of areas like Murray. Let's say if you live north of Nashville or north of Murray, Kentucky, you're obviously at risk of potentially getting some snowfall with this system, and same goes for some sleet and maybe even some freezing rain, especially where you see that purple and pink. And then you guys can see how we still continue to see some snowfall across those areas, and it even gets bigger too. Look at this, really big snowstorm, if why not even a nor'easter, by the time it makes its way up the East Coast. So we will need to watch that very closely, as we could be talking about very, very heavy snowfall, because either this purple that you see right here indicates a mix, or it indicates very heavy snowfall, which it could very well indicate. So we must watch it closely, as there could potentially be, once again, a nor'easter with snowfall totals potentially over a half a foot in some areas, which we will talk about in just a second. Now, let's take a look at the snowfall totals. First, taking a look at this first winter storm, which will be tomorrow. You guys can see that the HRRR model is showing over a foot of snowfall for almost all of Iowa. Look at this. There's even some areas that could even get up to 20 inches of snowfall, guys. And once again, this is tonight, tomorrow, and even into Sunday, guys. And this is really considerable, because this is even more snowfall than what we were seeing on the models a couple of days ago. And we even see quite a bit of that for areas like Michigan and northern Indiana, because I do expect that winter storm watch to get upgraded, especially since even if we don't see a foot of snowfall, even a half a foot of snow is still very considerable, especially since this is our first snowfall of the season so far in terms of winter. So we will need to keep an eye on that very closely, and we could even be talking about some pockets of heavier snowfall, which will remain isolated, but there is also the potential that we could maybe catch a few spots over here in New England, especially New York and Pennsylvania, of maybe up to a foot of lake effect snow. Now, the European model, however, let's first start by taking a look at this first system first, is showing still a foot of snow across areas of Iowa, but not as widespread though. This is really interesting, guys, because the European model barely even shows shows a foot of snowfall. Only a foot of snowfall at the most is showing up on this European model, and so that kind of shows us once again that there's still a little uncertainty, but once again, the model to agree with would probably be the ARRR model once again, all because it's like a future radar. So we will still need to keep an eye on the European model to see if it's right about it, but either way though, once again, a foot of snowfall is super considerable. Even if we don't get a half a foot of snowfall, even a few inches of snowfall is still very considerable too, because once again, even a little bit can still cause dangerous travel, guys. I need you guys to make sure you guys are understanding how dangerous snowfall can be, even if it's only a little bit. Look at that, maybe India only getting a few inches of snow shown on the European model, but once again, that can still be dangerous, especially if it gets a little icy out there. So we need you guys to be aware of that, especially if you guys are traveling back from Thanksgiving, or if you guys are gonna continue to visit whoever you guys are with. So make sure you guys are watching that. And then we do also have that next big winter storm still expected to roll on through next week. And just look at that, after Tuesday of next week, you guys can just see that adding up. Look at that, potentially over a foot of snowfall for areas of New England. And when we see the snow system develop and get stronger and heavier, we could potentially be talking maybe 4 inches of snowfall down here towards northern Kentucky and parts there of Evansville, Indiana. So we will need to keep an eye on that closely. Same goes with Illinois. Look at that, maybe some areas in Illinois also picking up 4 inches of snowfall with this next winter storm. Once again, this is not the one this weekend, because that will mainly be north of this area, but it will still maybe bring a little bit down here. But once again, we're especially talking about the one next week, which will impact this area, just so that we guys understand the cutoff between the snowfall this weekend and the snowfall early next week. So this right here is the snowfall early next week, from about Monday all the way through Thursday of next week. This is going to be our next big winter storm. So this one right here, it will be let's say this is number 1, and this one down here is number 2. So we just want to make sure you guys are understanding what snowstorm you guys might get hit by. And in my opinion, number 2 looks to be the one to keep an eye on very closely, especially since models are really continuing to get worse. And that's also because we already got really good confidence about what to expect with this first winter storm. So we will keep an eye on that. Now, the last 2 things I want to look at, and we'll go ahead and just quickly go through it, because this video is already getting quite long. So as you guys can see, several shots of cold air will likely roll on through over the next couple of weeks. And if you guys know your guys' averages, it will be really easy to understand what this is, because look at that, we're looking at 23 degrees above average across parts there of the Midwest by the time we head into the start of next week. After that, we continue to see below normal temperatures even as we head into after next week. So not next week, but after next week. So we're probably looking about 10 days out from now still, which is, pretty far out, but we could still get maybe a big shot of cold air like this that brings well below normal temperatures, even all the way down into Florida, where we might even be talking about temperatures all the way down in the 30s for lows. So that will definitely be quite chilly down there. And then there's another big shot of cold air that could very well come on down, and that will likely bring some pretty big impacts if we do see a lot of these cold shots make its way down there towards the Gulf Coast. And as you guys can see, Climate Prediction Center completely agrees with that model. Look at that, shows below normal temperatures during the 6 to 10 day outlook, which will be next week and even the week after next week, and then the 8 to 14 day outlook, which will be next week, week after, and even some of the third week in December could still be below average. And we still see that warm air even farther down south with above normal precipitation overall, and maybe even an area getting a little bit less than usual. So we will keep an eye on that. But thank you all so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, as we will continue to keep you guys up to date on these couple of winter storms that will roll on through, especially the one this weekend and early next week, which will likely bring considerable amounts of snowfall. And once again, that's all because of dangerous travel. You guys know what considerable means. It means really dangerous conditions out there, so we need you guys to be aware about that. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend out there, and I hope you guys enjoy your Thanksgiving weekend, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Thank you all so much for watching, and goodbye.